ask how things went. I don't want to know.
Yeah, system.
Yeah, I know. There's got to be some system.
Yeah.
Maybe some point system.
Okay.
Should be good.
Yep, it should be live in just a second. I think it'll even start showing up.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
Yeah, I didn't recognize it. Looks like very long. They just pop it. I was getting sort of watching.
It's once they like actually see you burning, it's really like, oh, wait. Then they freak out.
Very nice people.
John is scary. Yeah, he's loving it. When he gets back, and I think he was we all knew it was like no, he was carrying on. Yeah, I just almost got before lunch. Yeah. Oh, so yeah, I've been to London or Spain. Paris. Not been.
Tomorrow, I'm talking to someone and they say, hey, keyword might be from the trash. The guy would talk to yeah. And you don't hear any issues.
Yep, the Amash gave us one as well.
Oh yeah, that was great.
Going to start in just a couple minutes. If anyone wants to use the bathroom or anything like that, might be a good time because we'll get started soon. Good evening. Thank you very much for coming out tonight for our debate between the candidates in the 3rd Congressional District, Republican Congressman Justin Amash and his Democratic challenger Bob Goodrich. At this time, if you have a cell phone or anything else which might go off during the debate, please make sure it is silenced in some way so we don't hear it. And we'd also ask that you hold all of your applause until the very end. I'm Gordon Evans with WNUK Radio in Kalamazoo. I'll be moderating tonight. Let me go over the ground rules before we start. Both candidates will get 1 minute for an opening statement. Then we'll move on to questions. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond. There is the option for a rebuttal. The candidates can ask for it, or I may choose to redirect the question and talk about it more. They would also get a minute for rebuttal, and both candidates will have 1 minute for closing statements. We flipped a coin to determine the order before we began, and because of that coin flip, Republican Congressman Justin Amash will give his opening statement first.
Well, thanks for having me here today, and thanks for being here as part of this debate. I think it's important as a district that we have these kind of open debates where we can discuss these ideas. I want to thank Vernon Brook for opening up this facility for us. I want to thank Gordon Evans for moderating this debate. When I ran for Congress, I promised that I would represent regular Americans, ordinary people, not go to Washington to represent just the special interests like we've seen so many do in Washington. And I've fulfilled that oath to follow the Constitution, to represent each of you. I promised that I would be transparent and accountable. I hold a lot of town halls, which many of you have been invited to and have attended. And I explain every vote I take publicly. I've never missed a vote out of 2,764 votes in Congress, and I'm honored each day to be your representative. And I'm asking for your support, and I hope you get a good sense of our differences here today.
Goodrich, your opening statement, 1 minute.
Well, I'm very appreciative of the attendance of people here. I'm honored and privileged to be able to represent a major party for a federal office like running for the United States Congress. I wish to really address what I consider the principle of America, and that's fairness. We sought our independence some 230 years ago because it was a very privileged group of people, mostly titled aristocrats. They owned property and they more or less dominated our country. And we wanted a different kind of America. And sadly, the way things have developed over the last 40 years, we have almost recreated the privileged class of the aristocrats with the wealth that now is in the hands of a few people and lacking in the hands of many other Americans. So I'm hoping during this discussion I can remind people that political races are really a reflection on the electorate. And how do we see ourselves? How do we want to live our lives? I believe fairness should be the operative standard by which we look at today's conversation.
So let's move on to questions. We'll begin with Mr. Goodrich first, and I think over the next hour people are going to see that there are many differences between how you and Congressman Amash view the world. So let's start with a big, broad question. What is the proper role of the federal government? What should it do? What should it not do?
Well, it's not the government, or it's not a government. It's our government. And if only people would recognize that it's the water treatment plants and it's the fresh air that we breathe, the courts, the parks, and the military. There are 23 million American citizens who are part of the government. And the services they provide are integral to our lives. Congressman Amash will often talk about the bureaucracy of the government. But every major corporation, whether it's an entity rather, whether it's a major bank, a defense contractor, an airline, they all are massive organizations that require some discipline in management. The fact that the government is big doesn't make it not integral to our lives. And if there was only a consciousness of the commons and of the public interest that is implemented through the government, I think we wouldn't have the kind of sense of alienation. People sometimes speak of the government as if it's a meteor that dropped in the sky and it's not part of our lives. I'd like to get you to recognize it is part of our lives. That's why I'd like to represent you as a member of the Congress.
Congressman Amash, the role of government.
Yeah, the role of government is to protect our liberty. And that's how the framers understood the role of government. And what we have in our constitutional republic is a system where different levels of government do different things. And the primary role of the federal government is to defend us from outside threats. That's why when you look at the Constitution, it talks a lot about national defense. And it's also to protect our rights. We have a Bill of Rights there to ensure that people's civil liberties are protected. So those are the things that we should focus on as a federal government. Those are the things I focus on as a federal representative. And there are other things that should be handled at the state level. And of course, most things should occur in our private lives and not be controlled by government level. It should be through interactions among people who voluntarily exchange ideas and goods and services.
Did you want to say something, Mr.
Well, there's such a disparity in the various states. There's such an issue of the scale of activity that if you're in a circumstance where you don't have a steady job, you have a part-time job, modest income, how do you individually resolve that problem? That's why the concept of the commons, the public good, the public interest, is exemplified through our government. And you can't look to some very small state because we have a variance between 50, and again, individually, in a country of 320 million, with the complexity of our economy, the government is a mediator that is essential to all our lives. It's simple matters of the traffic laws.
Congressman Amash.
It's because we have a large country that we have a federal system where the federal government handles some issues and state government handles other issues, local governments handle still other issues, and much happens privately. The fact that the government isn't interfering with every aspect of our lives doesn't mean that individuals can't work together. We're supposed to, as individuals, work together. We're supposed to be compassionate and find ways to improve each other's lives. And that's something that the framers of the Constitution, the founders of this country, sought to protect. So the fact that we don't have government involvement in every aspect of our lives doesn't mean that we as individuals can't work together as a community.
Let's deal with the story which came out today about Ebola. The Department of Homeland Security now is going to make sure that travelers who come from West Africa go into one of 5 airports in the United States which are better set up to screen for Ebola. Congressman Amash, is that enough? Should the U.S. have a more widespread travel ban?
Well, I think that the airlines are first and foremost the defenders of our safety. So the airlines should take the steps necessary to prevent people who have Ebola or who are at risk of having Ebola from getting onto flights where they can leave those countries and cause transmission of the disease. But I think that we can do more. We should be stopping it at the point of entry from those, the exit from those countries, so not just the point of entry in our country. So we should work with those West African countries. We should work with our European partners because there aren't direct flights really going from these West African countries to the United States. They're going through other countries. So we should work with them to make sure that at the point of entry onto an airplane, we have screens in place to ensure that no one who's infected is getting on board.
Mr. Goodrich, should we have a widespread travel ban to deal with Ebola?
I find it astonishing it would even be considered. Clearly the science is going to allow us to examine each circumstance of an infection, and the risk of our having an epidemic or a widespread circumstance of Ebola is almost zero. There are more people that fall down stairs in their homes and suffer injury than are going to be afflicted by Ebola. The question, as I said earlier, elections and races like having now with Congressman Amash is really a reflection on who we are. And we should ask ourselves, why do we dwell on problems that are really remote from us, don't deal with our general day-to-day lives? Why does terrorism, which has not been part of American life in 15 years, still frighten us? Why do those of us who have not been subject to crime worry about it as obsessively as we do? Ebola, sadly, is not an issue that is part of our lives. We've just got to be rational, as the Congressman said, and deal with it appropriately. But there are immediate problems that need to be addressed tonight.
Let's talk a little bit about taxes. If the tax structure were going to be scrapped and start from scratch, and beginning with Mr. Goodrich, you were in Congress, what sort of things would you want to see in a brand new tax system for the United States?
Well, again, the operative word in America is fairness. Less than 50 years ago, corporate America was paying about 25% of our federal budget. Today it's about 7%. And you've got to ask yourself, is that truly fair? That we've shifted the responsibility of paying bills, of employing the 23 million public employees, of handling all the various bureaus, our embassies, our military, our police departments, our teachers, our fire departments. Is there fairness in the taxes? We need a tax that reflects people's ability to pay, and then we need to ask ourselves, do we have the funds by which to support the necessary components of life, like education, like our museums, our libraries? All of us take great pride in the public services and facilities in our country. One of the tragedies that's occurring with Ebola is defunding of the Center for Disease Control. There isn't adequate taxes right now in America. Even though you may think you pay too much, there isn't adequate taxing.
Congressman Amash.
Well, the tax code should be to raise revenue, not to socially engineer. And too often it's been used to give members of Congress and members of the state legislature a lot of power over what activities we take part in and what kind of things we do in our day-to-day lives. So I would have a lower, flatter tax code, lower rates, flatter tax code with fewer credits and deductions than we have now. And I would remove all of the special interest giveaways. We have way too much corporate welfare out there. It's something I fought against when I was in the State House. It's something I fought against in Congress. I think we need to eliminate corporate welfare. We should be more concerned about corporate welfare than welfare for those who are actually in need. And too often there's just focus on welfare for those who are in need and not corporate welfare. And we need to make sure that our big corporations are paying, because in some cases large corporations are paying no taxes. So let's have a system that is fair to all people.
Mr. Goodrich, would you agree with that sentiment from Congressman Amash about corporate welfare? Do you agree that that is something that Congress should be looking to root out of
It's
tax?
very inappropriate. It's predominantly supported by the Republican Party, and it's interesting that Congressman Amash has distanced himself from an activity that his party strongly supports, but clearly a flat tax is highly regressive. Your ability to pay has got to be the function. If you're earning $100,000 a year, sales tax going from 5% to 7%, whatever the variable is far easier for you to pay if instead of you're only making $15,000 a year. Tax is the operative word tonight. I hope you can remember, from my perspective, is fairness. And certainly a progressive tax reflecting the ability to pay is critical. And to call assisting people who need assistance for a variety of reasons, physical, mental, calling that social engineering is somewhat pejorative and somewhat just wrong. It's people who need help should not be victimized by terminology.
Well, I would just respond that the social engineering is generally to benefit, it's been to benefit large corporations. It's been to require people to undertake certain activities in order to get particular tax breaks. And I think that's the problem. I'm not speaking specifically about welfare for the poor. As to the comment that Republicans have been pushing corporate welfare, I won't deny that there are Republicans who push for corporate welfare. I've been fighting against them since I've been in Congress and when I was in the State House. But the Democrats have been supportive of corporate welfare as well. And in fact, President Obama, who just a few years ago said he was against the Export-Import Bank, which is a corporate welfare bank that takes money from regular Americans and gives it to large corporations. A few years ago he said he was against that. Now he says he's in favor of it. And it's been conservative Republicans who have been pushing to stop the corporate welfare Export-Import Bank, and it's been Democrats who are saying, no, we need to keep it.
Let's talk about energy for a little bit, beginning with Congressman Amash. What's the federal government's proper role here? Should it be trying to nudge the country in the direction of using renewables and less fossil fuels?
I think it should be neutral when it comes to which energy sources we use. And for too long, there was a subsidization of oil. And to make up for it, now you have the federal government and state government subsidizing alternative energies. And I think all of the subsidies should go away. There shouldn't be subsidies for oil companies. There shouldn't be subsidies for wind energy. We should have a level playing field and let the market determine which resource we're going to use. And that's a much more efficient way to do it. It's a better way to do it. It will keep costs down. A lot of times, it seems that people on the other side of the aisle think that if you just subsidize it, you can eventually get costs to go down. But what you find is it takes a really long time, and if you force people to adopt a certain technology, they're not going to adopt it if it costs a lot of money. And a lot of these technologies cost a lot of money right now, a lot of these resources.
Mr. Goodrich.
Well, alternative energy is absolutely critical. We're very aware of the climate change that's occurred. We have now more moisture in our atmosphere than we've ever had in the past. That's why we're having extraordinary floods and large windstorms all over the world. But most importantly, there is now, with the amount of carbon dioxide that's being burned, we're seeing some of the acidic burn from the carbon dioxide not only affecting our atmosphere, but also the acidic circumstance of our ocean. Almost all the coral reefs on our planet are dying. Fish by the billions are dying because the composition of our ocean has changed. We're seeing ice come off of Iceland, Greenland, and it's affecting the water levels of our country, our world. If we continue to use fossil fuel, we are going to have a calamity. And if we can improve alternative energy by the storage capacities, if our batteries improve, the solar energy, wind energy can be retained and used appropriately. But fossil fuel is a threat to all of us.
Congressman Amash, that climate change exists and that humans contribute to it, and if so, do you think the government should be doing something about it?
Yeah, I accept that the climate changes. I accept that humans contribute some amount to that change. The question is whether our activities, changing our activities that is, can reverse the amounts of climate change that happen, how much of that is a natural occurrence, and how much of it is caused by human activity. I think that's where there's a debate, where scientists don't have a clear consensus. So yes, climate changes. During the Middle Ages, we had a warmer climate. We've had colder climates at other times. How much of that is due to human activity? Certainly some small part of it may be due to human activity, but the question is whether we should change our whole lives based on that small portion. And it's important to remember, if you put a lot of regulations in place, a lot of taxes in place, if you stifle economic growth, you actually harm the development of new technologies that are cleaner, that will actually help our environment. It's actually countries that don't have the wealth, that don't have the resources, that have dirtier climates relative to the level of production.
Mr. Goodrich, one more minute.
Well, I think the sad circumstance of having to create a word that does, a term that doesn't really describe anything other than comedy, clean coal, it's almost like suggesting that there's healthy cigarettes. Clearly, we've got a problem with the way we're operating our country. We need the fossil fuels for not only just energy, but we need it for plastic. But we've got to be moderate in what we're doing. We've got to listen to the climate scientists. There's the thought that there is a disagreement. There's like 1 out of 1,000 scientists have any question with climate change. It's measurable. It's been in existence for over 40 years. And it's very, very intimidating. The crux of this is fixing our economy through having the proper energy is not going to cause disruption. It's going to be an improvement. And there's got to be some optimism that just retaining the past is not really predictive of how a good future for us is going to be. The new energy will be an improvement in our lives.
Mr. Goodrich, let's talk about healthcare for a little bit. If you were to get the opportunity to go back and revisit Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act, are there aspects of that law that you would like to see changed, to see some aspects of it not included or not part of the final healthcare solution?
Well, it's been 100 years. Theodore Roosevelt tried to get health care covered for American citizens 100 years ago. President Truman nearly got it accomplished after World War II. This century of now having some 50 million Americans without health care is finally beginning to end. People with pre-existing conditions now have coverage. Young people now have coverage to the age of 26. One of the key components of the health care is the digitization of medical records. It's now compulsory for doctors. Now when you go to see a doctor, at least in the past, you're relying on that physician's memory, his or hers. Now the law is going to allow better retention of information when you're getting covered. We still are going to have millions of people who aren't covered by health care. And you've got to remember, only in America is the practice of medicine a business. It'd be like going to court and having the judge say, I want to make a profit on these hearings. We are finally joining the rest of the planet and recognizing healthcare is a human right, no different than fresh air, clean water. And we now have that human right available to more Americans than previously was the case.
Congressman Amash, I'm going to alter the question a little bit for you because you're on record as wanting to repeal the Affordable Care Act. If you were going to come back with a new health care law, are there aspects of that law that you would want to include in some sort of health care reform?
Well, the health care bill has thousands of pages, so I'm sure you can find some grain of truth in there somewhere. But the reality is, health care shouldn't be handled at the federal level. It should be handled at the state level. So I would repeal it, and I would return the power to the states as it's supposed to be under our Constitution. What Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act does is simply shift the cost of health care from one person to another. It doesn't actually reduce the cost of health care. The only way to reduce the cost of health care is to make people accountable for their choices and to have people understand the cost of health care when they go into a doctor. Right now, when someone goes to a doctor's office or goes to a hospital, neither the patient nor the medical person, the doctor or the nurse, has any clue how much the procedure costs or the medication costs. And as long as that's going on, you're going to have rising healthcare costs. So you need to align costs and benefits. HSAs are one way to do this, and it should be handled at the state level, not the federal level.
A while back, Congressman Amash, you talked about corporate welfare. Don't a lot of the perks for corporations end up in legislation because of lobbyists and the money which is part of the system? And I'm wondering if you see any changes that could be made within the framework of the Citizens United decision regarding campaign finance in terms of disclosure or the amount of money which is being spent to try and get Congress to write legislation or amend legislation?
Yeah, there are definitely changes that can be made. One of the things I would do is level the playing field between individuals and corporations or PACs. Right now, PACs can contribute significantly more to a member of Congress and presumably to a member of state government than can individuals, and that's unfortunate. There should be more disclosure so that when you give to someone, you disclose it. So I think the problem is being looked at from the wrong direction a lot of times. Lower campaign contributions actually accrue to the benefit of incumbent members of Congress or incumbent legislators, because incumbents have an advantage in that they are public figures and they already get some publicity as a part of being an incumbent. So it's actually challengers who are punished through our campaign finance system that we currently have, because they don't have the same ability to access PAC resources. They're not connected to their party in Washington or wherever it may be, whether it's in Lansing or Washington. And so they have disadvantages. I think we should level that out.
Mr. Goodrich, campaign finance.
Well, it's tied into exactly how we all see ourselves as citizens. Why is it that corporate America spends billions of dollars, literally, trying to influence government to pass laws for their own benefit? Why the obsession with profit? And why is there a lionization? Why is there a praise of profit greed and obsessive need for more and more profit? The public space that we all can enjoy is for common usage, but it's astounding that some of our wealthiest corporations feel they don't have enough. And so they hire lobbyists, they hire people to influence the members of Congress, the members of state legislatures, all to maximize profit. And astoundingly, at election time, the voters seem to forget. Why is corporate America so avarice? Why are they so disinterested in the well-being of their fellow citizens? What's compelling them to hire these lobbyists? And the Congress is right. There's a lot of abuse. But the fundamental question is, why is it occurring?
Let's move on to education. We'll begin with Mr. Goodrich. Give us your idea. Education obviously has multi-levels of government, as we talked about tonight, federal, state, local. What should be the federal government's role when it comes to education?
Well, we're obviously one nation, and there has to be some standards as to what we learn in mathematics and science. Sadly, the students coming out of our schools right now don't test as well as many, many other students from around the world. And I just don't know if our curricula is exactly appropriate. But education is not totally a panacea. Good citizenship should be part of what we learn in school. The fact that you've got a college degree or even a PhD doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have economic stability. It's all too often, and it wasn't the case when I was a youngster, I learned to learn. My purpose of going to school was to learn how to learn. Now there's a connection. You go to school to advance your own economics. And sadly, that's not an immediate panacea. All of us have people that we know that are graduating college who are home without a job. And so looking to education to be the overall solution to the problems is too simplistic.
Congressman Amash, the role of education at the federal level.
Now, this is again a state issue. It's not a federal issue, and the federal government has intruded into this area far too much over the past several years. I've opposed No Child Left Behind when I was in the state legislature. I voted against Race to the Top. Now we have Common Core, which I'm opposed to. I think the more you get the federal government involved in education, the more you have a one-size-fits-all policy for the entire country, the worse our education system is going to be. I want states and school districts and parents to make those determinations for the children and not have the federal government decide that we're going to follow one curriculum for everyone. And the more you get the federal government involved, the more you end up with things like Common Core, where there's basically bribery to the states. If they don't adopt a particular standard, then they don't receive federal funding. And so you end up with every state adopting that standard, and some try to characterize that as voluntary, but when they're receiving money from the federal government, they're being bribed to do it.
Back to Mr. Goodrich, Common Core. Are you in favor of
It took years to analyze what was the proper way to teach science, mathematics, literature, languages, to have a standard that's been analyzed and thoroughly checked out. utilized throughout the country makes all the sense in the world. Every one of us realize individualization can be very good, but there are a lot of quirky and unthoughtful ideas that really don't need to be universalized by, in any given state or any given community. The government is trying to provide a minimum standard by which our students in all of the country can succeed. There's no plan to be disruptive. The Common Core is meant to be a basic educational mechanism by which all American students can benefit. There's nothing but good, positive thought involved with Common Core. It's regrettable it's being demonized from its source, but the fact that it's coming from the government, and again, it's our government. It's not some alien that's forcing something upon us.
Congressman Amash, should there be some sort of a national standard? Maybe not Common Core, but should there be some sort of national standard set for schools across the country?
Not if it's imposed through bribes from the federal government. I don't think that there's a problem for some federal officials to opine on what would be good standards, but I think it's a problem when you have the federal government telling state governments and telling parents that you must adopt a particular standard or you're not going to receive federal funding. Nobody is against high standards. We all want the very highest standards for our children. So the question is how you get those high standards. I don't think that the way you get there is by trusting federal bureaucrats to decide this is how we're going to teach all of our children. So I put more faith in individuals, I put more faith in teachers to determine what is a good education for our children and to think about the different students they have in their classroom. Not all students learn the same way. Some students need a special way of being educated compared to other students. So we have to allow the teachers the flexibility to understand who their students are and to teach them according to what they think will get the best outcome.
Congressman Amash, people who know your name outside of this district probably know it because of your stance on the National Security Agency and privacy and surveillance. Give us the right balance that we strike between wanting to have our privacy, not wanting to be snooped on, but also wanting to be safe from a possible terrorist attack.
Well, the Constitution gives us the right balance. The framers of the Constitution put that balance in place long ago, and it served us well to follow it. We have the Fourth Amendment, and we have several other amendments to the Constitution that have protected our rights. So it's just a matter of the federal government following the Constitution that's already in place. It's there to provide the government with the ability to go after someone who's suspected of doing something, but they have to meet a reasonable standard. And right now what the government is doing is they're collecting information on every single person in the country without any suspicion that the person is doing anything wrong. And then they are transferring that information reportedly to other agencies for investigation of crimes, and sometimes they're reverse engineering the collection of that information so that they can pretend they collected it in a lawful manner. This is horrific and it needs to stop, and it's something I'm going to continue to fight against as a congressman.
Mr. Goodrich, the issue of privacy versus security.
Well, all my life I've been active with the ACLU, which is trying to defend the Constitution. And clearly the Constitution, as the Congressman spoke of, protects all of us. That is the guardian by which our lives are secure. That was the heritage we have from the common law of England. We have a court system that the government should acknowledge. If they have a probable cause or any reasonable suspicion that they need to investigate something, show the court what their evidence is and proceed accordingly. To arbitrarily have the investigators, it'd be almost as if you have the police officer making up the crimes as he or she walks down the street. That's how the NSA is operating. We have a court system to protect all of us. We have a constitution to protect all of us. And there aren't enough people who are really concerned about how intrusive and inappropriate government action can be. But this is a rare exception, and I don't want to fearmonger that the government is excessively always intruding. This is one case where there should be review of what they are doing.
Mr. Goodrich, Congress has moved to provide arms to some of the rebels in Syria. The New York Times article last week showing that in the history of trying to arm rebels in various countries, it has rarely worked very If you were a member of Congress, is this the track that you would want to continue to pursue, or do you think that it's time to rethink this issue, and are there new ideas about what to do in troubled spots of the world?
Well, we have had a difficult history in Central and South America of arming rebels that proved to be supporting dictators. In Syria, we have the conflict that's been going on for 1,200 years. It's a very intense religious battle. There's the Sunnis, the Shiites, the Alawis, who are the government of Syria, are part of the Shiite world tied to Iran. We are now supporting that were at one time around it, but there's a humanitarian component to this. There are people being victimized as a small minority. The key to America is not only the concept of fairness, but this is an aspect of it. We protect our minorities. If you're a small group of people, you're not going to be victimized by the majority. In the Middle East, oftentimes, if you're a minority, you're in jail. Are highly in jeopardy. This group in Syria that we protected was going to be killed by a very sadistic body of people who are now trying to create a caliphate. I think we did the appropriate thing. How it's going to turn out, I don't know.
Congressman Amash.
I'm very concerned about arming the rebels, and when we had a vote on it in Congress, I voted no on arming the rebels. I'm very concerned about the Syrian Christian community and other minority communities in the Middle East. And the wrong way to go about it is to arm these rebels. The rebels have been in conflict with the Assad regime over the past few years. And the theory behind arming the rebels was that they would help us fight ISIS, which doesn't make any sense. If you arm rebels who have been at war with Assad, they're going to use those weapons against Assad. They're not thinking, let's go use them against ISIS. And actually, in the first days after we determined that we would arm these rebels, and again, I voted no on this, you had rebels saying, hey, why isn't the U.S. going after Assad? Why are they targeting ISIS? So we can see this problem. It's a mistake we've made repeatedly in history, and I think we need to rethink this. We armed the Iraqi army, and they quickly decided to abandon their fight against ISIS. I don't see how arming these rebels is going to be successful.
Give us your criteria as a member of Congress when asked to authorize the use of force overseas. What is the criteria where you say, yes, that will get my vote?
Well, there has to be a clear strategy in place. There has to be a clear mission. It has to be winnable and constitutional. So someone has to come to us in Congress, the president has to come to us and say, hey, I want to authorize this. And it has to be in defense of the United States. There are circumstances where there might be a genocide overseas, in which case I could see getting involved in an event to stop something like a new Hitler, someone who is committing mass atrocities against people who are completely defenseless. But in every case, you have to go to Congress and you must get authorization. And Congress should have the support of the American people, because when we enter people into combat, there's a risk that they will not return. So I need to have the community behind it. I don't think you should ever go to war unless the American people tell you this is a war that we want to fight. And then when you go in, you go with full force and you go in to win. You don't go in halfway.
Mr. Goodrich, what would it take to get your vote to authorize the use of U.S. force?
Well, we're partly there already with over 1,000 military bases throughout the world. 40 to 50% of all the military spending on the planet, there are 207 countries, we're one. But we spend almost 45% of the entire planet's funding for military. So it's not as if we can pretend we're Norway. We are militarily the most powerful country on the planet. It's inevitable that we become, even reluctantly, a referee, just by the mass of our military strength. And the Congressman's right, we've got to be very careful how we use it, because citizens in the young people in our country in jeopardy. It's just tragic that there are so many conflicts that occur throughout the world, in Chechnya, in the Middle East, in Thailand, and I don't know how to avoid how widely spread our bases are and our American interests are that draws into these conflicts.
So, Mr. Goodrich, would you favor the United States scaling back its military budget and its military presence around the world?
Well, we are in the process of changing. The military is now going more and more to automation, drones, equipment. They are going to be downsizing the personnel in the military, and that segues to one of the tragedies of our digital economy, the changing structure of jobs. But the military is not looking to have the budgets they once did for personnel, but they want limitless equipment, and that's part of our industrial complex, industrial military complex. You may not realize that most all our foreign aid is given to countries with the expectation they will use that money to buy military equipment. And I guarantee you the helicopter manufacturers, the rifle manufacturers, the missile makers are very happy to have money go through Egypt coming back to themselves. We are very dependent, regrettably, on military spending, and it should be reviewed.
Congressman Amash, can we scale back the military budget and our presence?
Yes, and I've talked about that many times in my town halls, that we need to look at the entire budget. We have an $18 trillion debt, and the second largest portion of our budget is military spending. I don't think we need to be the police for the entire world. And when we look at our activities overseas, we need to think about spending money and using our resources to defend the United States. It's not about